But we are going to begin tonight with the remarkable testimony before the American people today, a window into the Trump White House we have not heard before. And even former President Trump's loyal Attorney General Bill Barr describing the former president in the weeks following the election as detached from reality. Tonight, the testimony from top campaign aides, Trump insiders, even his daughter Ivanka Trump, all saying it was clear the election was not going to be called on election night, urging the president not to declare victory. But the president instead, before the cameras at 2:30 a.m., saying this is a fraud on the American public, saying we did win this election. But the truth behind the scenes is campaign manager Bill Stepien knew they had not won. He testified he told the former president it was far too early to make that claim, others making the case too. But they testified the president listened to Rudy Giuliani instead. And there was also testimony today that Giuliani showed up at the White House intoxicated on election night. Giuliani's attorney tonight denying that claim. And former Attorney General Bill Barr, a very loyal AG to the former president, now emerging as a key witness in these hearings. In that videotaped testimony saying today in the weeks following the election with the former president and these false claims, Barr says he became demoralized himself, saying if the president believed those lies, that the president had, as I mentioned, become detached from reality. Tonight here, the never-before-seen testimony, the top Trump campaign aides, his daughter Ivanka Trump, her husband Jared Kushner, and a portrait inside the Trump White House of election night and of the weeks leading up to January 6th. ABC's chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl leading us off tonight from Capitol Hill.
With recorded testimony from some of the people closest to Donald Trump, the January 6th committee revealed what was going on inside the White House late on election night 2020, as Trump was urged not to declare victory by his campaign manager.
It was far too early to be making any calls like that. Ballots were still being counted. Ballots were still going to be counted for days. And it was far too early to be making any proclamation like that.
His senior strategist.
To the best of my memory, and I was saying that we should not go and declare victory until we had a better sense of the numbers.
His daughter.
I don't know that I had a firm view as to what he should say in that circumstance. The results were still being counted. It was becoming clear that the race would not be called on election night.
It was tense at the White House. Witness these photos taken on election night and published exclusively in my book, Betrayal. You see the anguish on their faces. But as Trump's family and top aides urged him not to declare victory, Rudy Giuliani, who some testified showed up at the White House intoxicated, offered Trump the only advice he wanted to hear. Late today, Giuliani's attorney said he wasn't drunk.
And the mayor was definitely intoxicated, but I do not know his level of intoxication when he spoke with the president, for example. I think effectively Mayor Giuliani was saying, we want it. They're stealing it from us. Where'd all the votes come from? We need to go say that we won.
The then president spoke at 2:30 a.m.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
Trump's campaign manager told the committee that in the days after the election, Trump turned away from his top advisors and toward another group led by Giuliani, spinning unfounded conspiracy theories.
There were two groups of, we called them kind of my team and Rudy's team. I didn't mind being characterized as being part of Team Normal. I didn't think what was happening was necessarily honest or professional at that point in time. So that led to me stepping away.
In the middle of the night,
Giuliani and lawyer Sidney Powell were making wild claims about rigged voting machines, about Italian spy satellites and German computers switching votes, about thousands of dead people voting, all of it false. But some Trump supporters believed them.
I don't want to say that what we're doing is right. But if the election's being stolen, what is it going to take?
Trump's own attorney general, Bill Barr, told the president there was no evidence of any widespread fraud that would change the election. But Trump remained focused on those wild and false conspiracy theories.
I was somewhat demoralized because I thought, boy, if he really believes this stuff, he has, lost contact with he's become detached from reality. if he really believes this stuff.
What they were proposing, I thought was nuts. And the theory was also completely nuts.
Even son-in-law Jared Kushner said he wasn't happy with Giuliani's influence.
Did you ever share, Mr. Kushner, your view of Mr. Giuliani? Did you ever share your perspective about him with the president?
I guess, yes.
Tell me what you said.
Basically, not the approach I would take if I was you.
I made it clear I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was and I didn't want to be a part of it. But all the early claims that I understood were completely bogus and silly and usually based on complete misinformation.
And Barr told the committee about a meeting in the Oval Office. And after that meeting, he spoke to Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and Jared Kushner.
I said, how long is he going to carry on with this stolen election stuff? Where's this going to go? And by that time, Meadows had caught up with me and leaving the office and caught up with me and said that he said, look, I think that he's becoming more realistic and knows that there's a limit to how far he can take this. And then Jared said, yeah, we're working on this. We're working on it.
Weeks after the election, the former president continued to push the false claims. Barr went public to say there was no widespread fraud, infuriating the president.
The president was as mad as I've ever seen him, and he was trying to control himself. And the president said, well, this is, killing me. You didn't have to say this. You must have said this because you hate Trump.
Virtually all the witnesses, taped and live, were Republicans, including Ben Ginsburg, America's highest profile Republican election lawyer.
The simple fact is that the Trump campaign did not make its case.
And the committee heard from Chris Stirewalt, who worked for years as the Fox News election expert. He was there when Fox became the first network to declare Joe Biden the winner in Arizona.
After the election, as of November 7th, in your judgment, what were the chances of President Trump winning the election?
After that point?
Yes.
None. He needed 3 of these states to change. And in order to do that, I mean, you're at an infant. You're better off to play the Powerball than to have that come in.
Well, that point certainly landed today. John, you and I were on the air for these hearings today. John Carl back with us tonight. And this committee today, John, methodically laying out the evidence that Trump's inner circle told him not to declare victory on election night, that they warned him the election fraud claims were false, that the former president ignored them and kept pushing those claims. And the committee also said hundreds of millions of dollars were raised by supporters who believed the former president. Where did that money go?
$250 million, and according to the committee, virtually none of it went to efforts to actually challenge the election results. As Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren put it, the big lie was also a big ripoff.
There was another major headline after the hearing today, John. Attorney General Merrick Garland was asked. He made news when he said, yes, he is watching these hearings, and he added, so are the prosecutors.
The big question, David, is they're watching. We know that. The big question is whether or not they will decide to prosecute anybody in Trump's inner circle or Trump himself.